Climate Gate, Pachari Gate, Glacier Gate, Amazon Gate. And you've got racketeering globally. That document came out 2 months ago with the UN going and organizing key universities to engage in fraud. We go look at each university, Canada, Australia, the U.S., New Zealand, England. They are all cooking the books, cutting out temperature data that shows that we're cooling. In the last 10 years at least, the heating ended 15 years ago. You've got Pachari making all this money. This is unprecedented because the entire globalist agenda for the UN, IMF, World Bank to set up world taxation and to be able to shut down or curtail any industry that isn't part of their inside coterie, it's all imploding. But the battle isn't over. We've won a lot of big battles. We've now got the initiative. We can beat them, but they're ensconced. They're dug in. We're going to have to go house to house with these people in our towns, our cities. Schwarzenegger's organizing governors and mayors to take over locally. Absolute treason. He needs to go back to his own country. They'll sure kick him out in Austria. James Dillingpole writes regularly for the Times of London, the Sunday Times, the Daily Telegraph. He's also a TV critic for The Spectator. He is the author of various novels, including, and we'll tell you about some of those. Also, well, he's a best-selling author and one of the great analysts breaking down what these people are up to. We'll also give you his website. This is a short segment, but James, is it safe to say, or let me ask you this question, is this exploding in their face in an even bigger fashion than you thought ClimateGate would originally?
Definitely. I thought Christmas had come early with ClimateGate. It seems that next Christmas has come early as well, because this has been fantastic. We are having so many scandals, I almost can't keep up with it. But that's the good news. The bad news is, as Shakespeare said, we have scotched the snake but not killed it. And that's the problem. The snake, I think, the great AGW, anthropogenic global warming snake, is much more dangerous now it's wounded. I think you're going to see all sorts of devious attempts by the IPCC, by the various green movements, to try and trick their way out of the situation. And we've got to be on our guard.
They've gone from stonewalling to now the BBC, The Age, and others going, oh, there were a few bad scientists that meant well because they know how real the problem is. And we now see the IPCC head and others saying, well, we did want to make it look worse because it is a real problem. So now they're saying we lied to save you.
Well, it's interesting, Alex. Are your listeners familiar with Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, the guy in charge, the beardy guy? He looks a bit like I call him the troll impersonator. He looks a bit like Saruman from Lord of the Rings.
Well, he looks like Osama bin Laden's older brother.
He does. Yeah, his uglier older brother. Yeah, that's the guy. Well, this Dr. Pachauri is in charge of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And as you know, he's been exposed for having all sorts of extraordinarily diverse business connections. You know, he's heavily involved in carbon trading. He's even got an involvement in an oil company, which is kind of weird, given that he's supposed to be saving the planet from big oil. Anyway, you know, he's in it up to the neck in carbon trading, which is a kind of, I think the most polite way of putting it is he has certain conflicts of interest. Okay, so this has been going on for quite some time. He's been exposed by us gallant bloggers. And who are the guys calling most loudly for his resignation? Why, funnily enough, they are the environmentalists.
All right, stay there, James. James Dillingpole, top writer over in England, author, researcher, somebody who's really been tracking this fraud. Long segment coming up. I want to just go through all the new scandals one by one, each one dwarfing ClimateGate, each one more wild. And you said it. It's 5 or 6 new scandals a day. I can't even keep track of it, but we're going to try here today. Stay with us. We have the best-selling author of Obamaland, I Have Seen the Future, and It Doesn't Work. Journalist Mr. Dillingpole with us. His website is james-delingpole.com, and he's with us for the rest of the hour. Now, if you just joined us, we're going to chronicle the aftermath of ClimateGate. And it's kind of like a battle at sea where you torpedo a big ship and it starts exploding and burning, but then the magazine where all of its explosives and artillery shells are stored ignites, and the whole ship just blows up. Now, they're still in our local towns and cities. They've invested hundreds of billions. They're not going to stop, but their capital ship, their main flagship, has completely exploded. They are now known as frauds, but they don't care. They're going to continue on. So we're going through the UN climate chief, who is admitting all these errors in their reports, but it's coming out that they, quote, did want to make it look worse so that we would accept them saving us. And, of course, he makes money off shutting down ancient, and when I say ancient, some of the oldest and best steel mills, forges in England, and the government pays him to then set one up in India. So this is also a hijacking of industry. We're covering that scandal first. Then we're going to get into all the other scandals with Mr. Dillingpole. Please continue, sir.
Yeah, we've got Dr. Pachauri, who is the bearded troll impersonator we talked about earlier. And this guy is in charge of the UN body responsible for telling the world that the world is getting dangerously hotter. It's all man's fault. We must spend lots and lots of money. We must increase regulation. We must have carbon credits, carbon controls. And lo and behold, what is this guy doing? He happens to have involvement in the carbon trading industry. This carbon trading industry, which was invented, of course, by Ken Lay of Enron. This guy has got connections with the Chicago Carbon Exchange, which, of course, is whose shareholders include Goldman Sachs and Al Gore. So, you know, the net broadens. There are a lot of very rich people and organizations who are involved in this massive scam. And so Pachauri Gate, as we call it, is this guy being exposed as being compromised, let us say. Then after Pachauri Gate, we get this thing called Glacier Gate. It turns out that the United Nations, the IPCC's fourth assessment report, you know, supposed to be the most accurate, up-to-date, most scientifically reliable report on the state of the planet climate-wise, tells us that the world's glaciers could be gone by 2035. Now, 2035 is not very far away, is it? So that's kind of quite a scary prospect. Could it be that man's evil work has been melting our glaciers so quickly they're going to be gone by 2035? Well, guess what? No, it isn't true at all. It turns out that this report got its figures wrong. The actual figure it should have quoted was 2350. That's a difference of I don't know. You do the math, but it's over 200 years, isn't it? How did the IPCC, which is supposed to be the work of what is it, 2,000 expert scientists in their field, 2,500 peer-reviewed scientists, we're told, how come this mistake got slipped into this reliable report? Well, it turns out that the IPCC plays pretty fast and loose with its scientific fact. It got this from a magazine article in New Scientist. Where did New Scientist get this information from about the glaciers melting by 2035? It got this information from a conversation on a mobile phone with an Indian chap who has since admitted that he made a terrible mistake. Now, funny, isn't it, that the IPCC never bothered to check up on this mistake? You know, this is the reliable, they keep using this word robust. The IPCC peer-reviewed process is robust. Well, I'm sorry, but this is anything but robust. This is climate fraud.
Now, James Dillingpole, investigating this for major publications in England and the United States, we know that when they have this mantra of, but it's peer-reviewed, it's peer-reviewed, ignore ClimateGate and that one of the main climate facilities used by the UN at East Anglia, England, ignore the fact that they are trying to hide decline. We have all these other scientists, all peer-reviewed, but when you look at it, they are all using the data collated at that university and 3 or 4 others who are all in the emails lying together. And then we go and look at the temperature measurements with NASA and with New Zealand and with everybody. It's all fraud. It's all lies. And their peer-reviewed journals are somebody on a cell phone. I mean, you can just call into the UN and say, Martians are going to land if we don't put taxes on gasoline. Oh, that's it. Peer-reviewed. Put it in there.